Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? It's Matt here from YoVideogames, and it's been a long time since I've done sort of a real talk video, and I think I'd like to just kind of jump in with some of the news that's been going on. Now, I'm not going to talk about any of the Microsoft stuff. You can head on over to our YoVideogames podcast to hear all about, Xbox's Game Pass and where they are. Instead, today, I'd kind of like to focus all the way over to the Far East and sort of how there's been a lot of good things coming out of the Land of the Rising Sun at the end of this holiday season, and especially into this January. So the first thing I kind of want to bring up here is Dragon Ball FighterZ has easily crossed 2 million sales in less than a week. Now, that's insane, but it's not entirely, shocking to me, because I knew from the moment I saw it at E3 at the Xbox presentation, and then especially going to E3 and playing it, talking to people there, talking to people at Comic-Con, talking to people at EVO, I knew this was going to be big. Like, we all knew this was going to be big. The Xenoverse game sold incredibly well, and this was coming off super hot. So it's selling 2 million right off the bat, worldwide, of course, is insane. Now, that's fantastic numbers. The only thing, though, I kind of want to point out, though, is there's a little bit of a misconception amongst a lot of people of how big Dragon Ball is, or games are, Dragon Ball games are worldwide. Now, the Xenoverse games have sold incredibly well, and really a lot of the other games, because they actually have been releasing a Dragon Ball game almost every year for like the past 10 plus years. But the thing is, they don't sell like Xenoverse sold. Like, Xenoverse 1 sold like 5 million units, Xenoverse 2 has sold 3.5, and this is all, Dragon Ball 5 is already up to 2 million. Now, a lot of people think that, well, of course, Dragon Ball, you could throw it on there and it's going to outsell anything. Come on, let's be real here, guys. Dragon Ball is an amazing accomplishment, and FighterZ is an amazing accomplishment. We should be happy about that fact. But let's not get in over our heads here and ignore the fact that there are other good selling fighting games. Like, Dragon Ball is not the only fighting game, and I think my real point of this is just because it says Dragon Ball does not necessarily guarantee amazing sales, and just because it says Dragon Ball, it's not the only reason a fighting game can sell well. We have really good selling fighting games of the past. Just to sort of put it out there, if you wanted to impress me with a Dragon Ball fighting game with sales, you would need to sell a Dragon Ball fighting game on one system only, and it would need to sell over 6 million copies, and every single copy would have to start at a base price of $132. Now, you might ask me, where the fuck am I pulling that number out of my ass? So here's the thing. Street Fighter 2 on the Super NES, the very first release of it, which was an exclusive to the Super NES, is Capcom's second best-selling game of all time, sold over 6 million units alone, and cost on average $75 in early 90s money, which, if you adjust for inflation, is about $132. So on a single system, at a price of over $100 adjusted for inflation, Street Fighter 2 alone, one single version, managed to crack over 6 million units. So that's where fighting games sort of can be. And if we want to look at like some of the best, we've got like Tekken 3, which is like somewhere around 8 or more million units. And then you've got Smash Brothers Brawl, which is like 11 million, and Smash Brothers 3DS is like 9. So, this is an amazing start for Dragon Ball FighterZ. But let's not just assume that just because it says Dragon Ball on it that like no other game could ever possibly touch it. But being that as it is, it does kind of lead into, well, Capcom and how they came out of this holiday season. And there was definitely some wins already, but Dead Rising 4 cracked 1 million, woohoo. And more importantly, just at the end of the year, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite eked over to 1 million sales. Now, 1 million sales is exactly half of what Dragon Ball FighterZ did in less than a week, and this has been over 4, almost 5 months for Marvel Infinite. Now, this is not sort of like piss on Marvel video exactly, but it's again, it goes back to E3, it goes back to what people were saying, the general feel of what everyone was kind of going with, and It's not really too much of a shock. 1 million for Marvel vs. Capcom is kind of fucking awful, especially since it's the very first version of it, and Marvel 3 sold much better out the gate, and continued to sell pretty good, even with the Ultimate controversy. But this is not a good look. But it's also, again, if anything, I don't want to shit on Marvel, because from the people who enjoy it, from people who know what they're doing, they really enjoy it. But it really should be a wake-up call to Capcom to say, hey, look, dudes, aesthetics and content are really important. And when content means game modes and things to do, and it also means your roster, because that is part of content. Like, who's in it? Who are you gonna be playing as? And people were never happy with this roster. I was never happy with this roster. Max and Steve were happy with the roster because they got X-Zero and Strider. But I mean, those are just 3 characters, and Venom finally came in DLC. But I don't think any of them or anyone else would ever really say it was a good roster. It wasn't a good roster. It was an awful roster. It still kind of is an awful roster. But and the aesthetics, of course, making it have that dull cinematic chrome filter movie look, terrible fucking idea. The only one who can get away with a gritty superhero is obviously NetherRealm with their Injustice game, and that still looks good. That's top of the line for gritty realism. And really, if you're not going to be anywhere close to as top of the line as, say, NetherRealm is with their sort of cinematic look, just don't bother. Go colorful. Should have been colorful. All the Marvel games have always been colorful, but I mean, yeah, 1 million after 4+ months, not a great look for Marvel. It's not terrible. I mean, 1 million's still pretty decent, but I don't know what the retention looks like. I know the game's kind of a ghost town on PC from what I've heard. I don't know what it looks like on Xbox. Obviously the most active community for that game is going to be on PS4, but on PC, though, I have to say that the modding community for it is fantastic. They've created some amazing looking models, but really, because the game is good, I really just hope it's more of a wake-up call to Capcom. And maybe one of the best things they can do is maybe put a new graphical, not redo the game, but just do something, remove some of the filters, and then maybe just boost some of the colors, kind of come back later this year with a bunch of new characters, a new graphical update, make it look good, polished. King of Fighters 14 did this. I think it's still possible for Marvel Infinite to do this. And on that note, it reminds me of Street Fighter V, because Street Fighter V came out, stumbled way out the gate hard too, and it's just gotten to 2 million, which, by the way, after 2-3 years, after about 2 years, Street Fighter V is at game match point to Dragon Ball's 2 million in less than a week. So again, Street Fighter V not doing so hot. They're finally at 2 million, but they've been pushing and pushing and pushing and constantly updating Street Fighter V. So maybe they could do the same for Marvel. It would be nice to see them do that. Capcom's been oddly quiet on the whole game. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of Dissidia and Dragon Ball coming out, and it's why the fuck talk about this game that's already kind of had a rocky start when all these other big games are out. Let them come out, everyone get enamored with them, and then we'll come back later with something new from Marvel. And I hope they do, and I hope it's a big update. I hope it's like a King of Fighters 14 where they do a nice big graphical push. Make it really colorful, and then start adding in the characters people actually fucking want to play as, because that would be a really nice thing. The other really big news, and it came out the same day in North America, is Monster Hunter 5. And that's, which is actually, I said 5, which is interesting because it was technically Monster Hunter 5, and then they changed it to Monster Hunter World, and it sold 5 million copies. You guessed it, there's the slip. Monster Hunter World is at 5 million copies, which is fucking insane. I'm actually super happy because they've always been quality games, if not a little bit, grindy, if you will, but they've always been quality games that were sadly on consoles that the Western audiences just never really wanted to play a big, in-depth game on. Now, the game started life on PS2, but, worldwide it never really caught on that hard. It caught on the PSP in Japan, which basically made it a non-seller here in North America. And then later they had their kind of push to make Monster Hunter 3 a thing on the Wii, and it did okay. But again, the Wii maybe not the best fit for an online-focused, in-depth kind of style game like Monster Hunter is. And then, of course, we move into the 3DS, and it does okay, because 3DS does... Luckily, 3DS was a big hit everywhere, so it does okay on 3DS worldwide. Obviously, it does a gangbusters in Japan, but people... generally speaking, people in the world are not really hot on 3DS, especially playing online, games like Monster Hunter on the 3DS. So Monster Hunter World was always a gamble in my eyes. Like, wow, they've got an uphill battle, but it's nice to see that they kind of hit it. Like, I know everyone's fucking addicted to this fucking game, and they've made some really smart quality of life changes to the core mechanics to make the game much easier and smoother to play. And I mean, it's a win on all fronts. It is a good game. It's always been a pretty good franchise. World is a fantastic game, and honestly, it does deserve those sales. Like, it's a great game. It reminds you of when Capcom put out really good quality titles all the time. And rounding that up, of course, we got RE7, which sold 4.8 million units. Not much more to say there other than, hey, that's really good. I know they were kind of hoping for 5 by now, but maybe I'm sure they'll get there soon enough. If they really want to get to 5 million units on RE7, they really need to unlock VR for Oculus and Vive. Other than that, it's good because it means more Resident Evil, probably in that style, will be coming. So, I mean, there's a bunch of updates Capcom had on their other titles, a bunch of other Resident Evil games. Sadly, RE6 is still selling way too well, but whatever. I mean, that's your guys' lost some money if anyone buys the remaster of that. Moving into dear old Nintendo. Now, this is where things kind of get like, I call it the mind blow territory. We all know the Switch is popular. We all know that Nintendo did very well this year, but I mean, like, let's look at how well they did. The Switch alone, in the 9 months it was on the market, sold over 14 million units. It surpassed the Wii U's lifetime sales. In 9 months, the Nintendo Switch has sold more Nintendo has sold more Nintendo Switches than all the Wii U's it's ever sold, ever. So, again, it's 14 million in 9 months is amazing, and it also kind of shows that the Wii U was a complete and utter fucking disaster. Splatoon 2, interestingly enough, in less than 9 months, and more like 6 months, Splatoon 2 has matched lifetime sales of Splatoon 1. There you go. Mario Kart 8 is at 7.3 million fucking copies sold, which is nuts. For comparison, this is the only game that hasn't met or matched its Wii U counterpart, where Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, which is the best-selling Wii U game of all time, sold 8.4 million units on the Wii U. Mario Kart 8's at 7.3. It's going to catch up. It's going to get there, because it's only been 8 months from Mario Kart 7. That record will be passed. Interestingly enough for me is the Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is at 6.7 million units, which is an awful lot. You combine that with, what is it, like 1.5 or so, maybe 2 of the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild, and Zelda Breath of the Wild is instantly, within 9 months, come into the top 2 best-selling Zelda games of all time. Like, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but around 8 is super high end for Zelda. Like, the best-selling Zelda games are Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. I think Link to the Past. I think, and now obviously Link to the Past is way out of that equation. It is Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and Breath of the Wild. Those are the best-selling Zelda games. And I mean, it's a good game. I don't think it's the best Zelda game. I don't think it's top 3. I don't think it's top 5. But it is good. It is a good game, and I'm glad. And it is a very enjoyable, fun game to play. Obviously, it's kind of hitting on that launch day hype. Would it have done as well without being on launch day? Probably not. The same is true of Twilight Princess. The only one that's like late into a console's life that's sold amazing is Ocarina of Time. Here's the other weird, interesting thing about Zelda, and that is my God, Japan, why can't you get on board? It is only sold 500,000 copies in Japan. Japan just don't care about Zelda. It's kind of amazing to me because, this was the same problem Twilight Princess had in Japan, where Enuma, got all mopey about the fact that it only sold 500,000 in Japan. And then Skyward Sword, I believe, did the same thing, where it didn't sell that great in Japan. And then Breath of the Wild now is only selling 500,000 in Japan. And it's like, it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if they make it super traditional. It doesn't matter if they make it just shitty like Skyward Sword. It doesn't matter if they make it super open world like Breath of the Wild. Japan just doesn't care, man. There's There's no way to get them in on the game. Even with Zelda's, fucking yoga pants, Japan don't care. I don't know. Is there any hope for that country? No, and there doesn't need to be, because again, you look at Dragon Ball, Capcom, even Nintendo's breakdown of territories, and it's Japan counts for 25% or less, in most cases of the sales of these games and systems. So again, who cares about them? I want to say that Mario Odyssey is the best-selling Switch game right now at over 9 million units sold. 9 million copies of Mario Odyssey have been sold. That's within 3 months. It's already fucking skyrocketed past Zelda and Mario Kart and Splatoon. And god damn it, I'm fucking proud of the world on this one. Super Mario Odyssey is the best game on Switch. Deserves to be the best-selling game on Switch. It is a fucking fantastic game. If you haven't played it, you're basically saying no to fun. And you don't say no to fun, do you? Oh, okay. Now, lastly for Nintendo, and this is a very personal big win for me, is Xenoblade 2. In 1 month, because it's only been 1 month that these sales were counted, it has sold over 1 million copies for Xenoblade 2 in 1 month, which is fucking huge for the series. It is already the second best-selling Xeno game of all time, and will very, very easily and quickly pass Xenogears as the best-selling Xeno title of all time, which is fine with me because it has the best gameplay of all the Xeno games. It arguably has the best soundtrack of all the Xeno games, although Gears is up there. And it deserved it. I know people gave shit about anime titties. I feel so wrong playing the game. I don't want to take the game because somehow my fucking masculinity or my cool factor will go down if I play a game with big anime titties and butt. I don't know. Whatever. People have their hang-ups. I don't get them. They're missing out. The game's a fucking blast. It's a great game, and it looks beautiful, and it sounds amazing. And more importantly than anything else, it's fun to play. It's just fun to play. So there's my rant on Xenoblade 2. Crazily enough, we found out that this game, we just found out that Monolith Soft only had 40 people working on Xenoblade 2. 40. Obviously, outsourcing was a major factor in the rest of the game, so you can at least double, if not more. Tri-Ace came in and helped on the game a little bit as well. But only 40 core staff were able to work on Xenoblade 2. And this is a giant game with big areas, lots of big giant areas, lots of side quests and shit. And only 40 internal Monolith Soft plus outsourcing, 10 from Tri-Ace and others, made this game happen. They had 3 user interface people quit mid-development, and Takahashi said how it was a huge blow, but they just had to power through it, which one explains exactly why there was some weird menu navigation in that game when 3 of your UI people quit, and 2, it's kind of amazing. Hey, we had this setback, people left, or we didn't. Everyone, 50 to 60% of our staff was working on Breath of the Wild. What do? We power through and we make the game happen, and it comes out in a year. I wish other giant RPG, making developers could learn a thing or two from fucking Xenoblade 2's development and how it made a very beautiful game that was a blast to fucking play and did it within a very short amount of time with only 40 internal staff and then the rest outsourced. Holy shit. Get your fucking shit together, Square! Lastly, I'm just going to touch on this real quick. EA, which is not a Japanese developer, obviously, they announced that they only sold 7 million copies of Battlefront 2, which was down 1 million from their projections, which was about half of what Battlefront, whatever the fuck it is, Star Wars Battlefront 1 sold 13 million in the same amount of time when it first came out in its first year, and Battlefront 2 has sold 7, which is almost half. Good job on all the people who rejected this game based on EA's trying to fuck over the consumer with predatory gambling practices. But I still gotta say, 7 million people, come on. Anyone who bought that game willingly with their own money, I have to ask, what is wrong with you? A lot of people probably got it as a gift at Christmas time, and I can't fault you for that. Parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, they don't know any better. But that being said, 7 million is still way too high, but I am proud of the fact that at least some justice was served to this shithole giant mega corporation that seriously exists solely to fuck over people with predatory practices. And again, if you're going to say, oh, the poor developers, they might get hurt by this. I'm like, okay, if anyone gets fucking hurt financially over a game selling 7 million copies, you have done something incredibly fucking wrong with your life. Because 7 million copies at $60 a pop is about $420 million. You know, they were closing in on the $500 million. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account any, you know, distribution of wealth and paying back, you know, distributors and yada, yada, yada. But you can't sell 7 million copies of something and sit there and ever say, oh, well, you know, it just didn't sell that well, we're going to need to fire you. Fuck. If anyone gets laid off from this, it should just be the executives at the top, because any developer should have no fucking should have no punishment for a game selling 7 million copies, for fuck's sake. So that's about all I gotta say on that. I'm super happy to see, you know, life signs of the Japanese game industry. It's nice to see that, you know, hey, their gamble to you know, maybe go after the biggest market with Monster Hunter World has actually paid off. That's really nice to see. Resident Evil 7 doing well is nice to see. All the Nintendo shit is great to see. Dragon Ball, we kind of just knew Dragon Ball was going to do good, so not a shock, but it's still not. It's great for Arc System Works, because I really, really hope this puts Arc System Works on the map. I hope they get other offers. I hope they get other things. I hope they get, you know, money to do the things Arc System wants to do, because they've deserved it for many, many years now, and it's just constantly flown under the radar of many people, just because it's so fucking hard to sell a new fighting game IP unless you're at launch and you're like boosting the hell out of your fucking graphics at or near launch, where you have a bunch of weird guest characters that are really popular. Like, it's so hard to do that, and Guilty Gear is the ultimate proof of that, because even though it looks amazing, it's Guilty Gear, it's an original IP, it's just that, and can't get people to fucking play it, which is unfortunate because it's a great game. But that's all I'm going to say on this for now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you on the channel. Later, dudes.